Vivian's room looks different. Did you just realize that? Aren't you a bit slow? Or perhaps you're getting dementia. Please, don't be a nuisance to us. Rocky and his wife, Ava, laughed as they saw me standing frozen in front of my own room. These people are devils. They're trying to drive me out of the house. I had a bad feeling about this since I arrived, and it turned out to be true. Ava's words made Rocky laugh with a sneer as well. However, they seem to be under one misunderstanding. They think the mortgage on this house is already paid off. If so, I must use this to my advantage. The disdain they show me will only last for now. Are you really okay with this? Even if I'm gone? Of course. Did you think you were needed? Their laughter will only last for now. My name is Florence, 54 years old. I gave birth twice in my early 20s and have gone through a divorce. I raised 2 sons as a single mother. My eldest son's name is Rocky, 30 years old. He's married with children. My granddaughter is truly adorable. Her name is Vivian. She just turned 3 and will enter preschool next year. Since my younger son, Joseph, has also left, I've decided to live freely and went ahead to buy a house. I finished raising my children relatively early, so I've been working hard. That's why I had some savings. However, due to a long period of being poor, I've gotten into the habit of saving. My sons didn't seem to know I had money when I bought the house, and both were surprised. I won't be a bother to you too. I can take care of myself. To this, Rocky said to me, Mom, I have my own family now and can't take care of you. You need to act your age and not be a bother, okay? Are these the words of a son I struggled to raise? More than sadness, I felt irritation at this moment. I won't be a bother. After all, I'm still young. Young. Well, I won't get involved, just so you know. Yes. Probably, Rocky is preemptively saying he won't take care of me if I get dementia or become ill. I vowed to keep my body and mind healthy. I don't want to be taken care of by someone who says such things. Rocky has always had a not-so-great personality. Joseph is the silent type who doesn't say much. Harmless, but I've had my worries, and perhaps I paid too much attention to Joseph, making Rocky the type to cause trouble. It was cute when they were kids, but it's pathetic for an adult to keep saying unnecessary things. I wonder how he even got married. When he first said he wanted to marry someone, I almost cried. I was happy that someone would marry such a son. The first time Rocky brought home the woman who would become his wife. Nice to meet you. My name is Ava. Ava was already looking around the house before greeting. At that time, we were living in a small apartment. It was quite old but well maintained, and I thought it was fine, but Ava's impression was different. Really, just as you said, an old house. I couldn't believe my ears. To say such a thing when becoming part of the family was shocking. However, Rocky, without reprimanding her, just laughed. That's why I said, let's greet quickly and go back. Wait a minute. I've prepared a meal. No way. We can't eat in such a dirty place. We came here because you wanted to at least say hello. We're not staying for a meal. Saying this, they left. I cried eating the leftover meal alone. It felt so empty and frustrated. I couldn't understand how someone could behave like that towards me at the first meeting. I only felt anger towards Rocky for not stopping her behavior. After the wedding, Rocky and Ava completely disappeared. They must be enjoying their life, I thought. I didn't want to meet Ava after our first impression, so it was a relief. One day, I received a message that they had a child. This was truly a joy. My first grandchild. I went to the hospital immediately and was happy when I held her. It was only for a short time, but it was a happy moment. Grandchildren are special, as they say, and she truly was. Her name seems to be Vivian. Vivian. When I called her name, she seemed to react a little. I must live long enough to see Vivian grow up properly. I remember making that resolution in my heart. But it wasn't easy to get to see her. I should have been prepared for it, but the reality of not being allowed to see her was sad. Hearing that Ava's parents were meeting her made it even more shocking. Perhaps it's true that the parents on the woman's side are more likely to see their grandchildren. No, it's just that my relationship with my eldest son is particularly weak. But I wanted to see her at least once a year. With that slight hope, I made a call. Please don't come today because we're going out. Then, when can I see you? It's been a year already. You don't need to see her, right? Ava's mom is enough to be Vivian's grandmother. How can you say that? That was the first time I truly felt alone. Fortunately, I was working, so I could talk to my colleagues about it. Everyone sympathized, saying it was too harsh, and I felt rescued. One colleague advised me, now that I was alone, to forget about such a family and do things I had been holding back on. That might be a good idea. First, I wondered what to do and spent my days fretting alone at home. Then, I saw a feature on TV about someone who moved to a place rich in nature and started living a refreshed life. I decided that was it for me, switched to fully remote work, and bought a house in the suburbs. I informed my sons about it. Then, Ava showed interest and came over with Vivian. I was delighted with Vivian's unexpected visit. Changing my environment had immediately led to something good. This place would be good for Vivian's environment too. I felt a sense of discomfort as she said that while looking around the house. Since then, Ava started coming over frequently, asking me to look after Vivian. Florence, you're happy to see Vivian, aren't you? Yes, but isn't it too frequent? You were so eager to see Vivian. I'm fulfilling your wish, and now you're complaining? Rocky and Ava spoke as if leaving their child with me was for my sake. Babysitting a few times a week turned into every day. I had hoped to enjoy my alone time, but this made it impossible. I was getting sleep-deprived, balancing work and babysitting. Florence, Vivian is here today too. Ava, I think I told you yesterday, but I'm a bit sick. Oh, I have plans to meet with friends today. It's too late now. Sorry, but you'll have to take Vivian with you. It's okay, your friends will understand. How irresponsible of you to say that. I wanted to tell them how irresponsible it was to dump babysitting on me every day, but I was too sick to argue. In the end, Ava left for her outing and didn't come back until 10 p.m. Vivian was at an age where she wouldn't listen to me. It was really tough. That day, they came to pick her up just before 10 a.m. Taking advantage of my silence, late-night pickups became frequent. Sometimes, they even left Vivian to stay overnight. Please, Rocky, talk to Ava. Huh? No way. After all, you seemed happy about it. I can't handle babysitting every day. I have work, you know? How selfish. You asked for this. When did I ever wish for daily babysitting? It's a mystery. After that conversation, an incident occurred. Suddenly one morning, a moving company brought a ton of stuff. What's going on? I didn't hear anything about moving. We were worried about you and thought about living together with Vivian, so we decided to move. Rocky's family had decided to move in. And what audacity in their words. I firmly refused to live together, but I didn't want to trouble the movers, so we agreed to talk after the move. It's impossible for 4 people to live here. It's fine. It's spacious enough. Besides, I like it here. Ava sat back on the sofa as if it was her own house and said that to me. Vivian was caught between me and Ava, looking at us. So, I couldn't say anything more. I had dreamt of a free-spirited life alone, but now I was starting to live with Rocky's family. Despite being a housewife, Ava did no household chores. I'm busy with childcare, she said, making me prepare 3 meals a day. Of course, they didn't give me any money for groceries. If this continues, I'll just be doing whatever they say. Since being at home meant I'd be left with the babysitting duties, I started leaving the house early in the morning to go to work. Even though I had switched to remote work, I was commuting. Florence, weren't you supposed to be fully remote? Sorry, I'm just really busy right now. It was true that I was busy with work. I had been chosen to lead a new department that was being created. After a long day of overtime, coming home past 11 p.m., something seemed off about the room. I was too tired to think much of it and headed straight to my room. What? This is... Nothing of mine was left in my room, which was now overflowing with Vivian's things. Vivian was sleeping peacefully on the bed. It's turned into Vivian's room. Standing dumbfounded at the entrance, I heard laughter. Turning around, Ava and Rocky were standing side by side, smirking at me. I couldn't grasp the situation. Where are my things? We got rid of them. They had kept only the furniture and appliances they liked. Almost everything of mine was thrown away. Really? They hardly brought in any money. We tried selling them at a recycle shop, but were told they were in bad condition. It was embarrassing. The little money we got from it, we'll keep. That's when I realized. These two had been planning to drive me out of this house from the beginning. You're out early in the morning and come back late. You don't need a house, do you? You're trying to kick me out? Did you just realize? Aren't you a bit slow? Or perhaps you're getting dementia. Please, don't be a nuisance to us. This woman is a devil. How could someone do something so cruel? It's unimaginable. I gave up on staying and fighting with Ava and her cohort. So, I should take this as you're kicking me out? Yes. We'll be living here. Think of it as your last act of filial piety and leave. I hadn't received any filial piety. Why should I be the one to perform it? But I kept silent. Are you really okay with this? Even if I'm gone? Florence, did you think we needed you? The most you were useful for was babysitting. The next day, I left the house as if I was being driven out. I hesitated about going to Joseph's house, but considering his reserved nature and the possibility of him cohabiting with someone, it would be unfair to burden him. Reluctantly, I decided to stay in a business hotel near my workplace. That night, Ava and Rocky apparently celebrated driving me out. Florence, you're not thinking of doing anything strange, are you? Don't worry, she's thick-skinned. Alone in the business hotel, I pondered over my situation. The next day, I explained my circumstances to my company and took some time off. I was worried about causing trouble for my team, but my colleagues were very supportive, which comforted me. The house, can you transfer it into my name? Rocky called me with such a request right away. I was actually about to contact you about that. You're sure you want to transfer it? Don't make me say it over and over. We talked about this when you left, didn't we? Hurry up. Understood. I proceeded with the transfer as requested. A few days later, as expected, I received a call. Florence, what is this about? Are you talking about the loan? You tricked us. Let's meet and talk this over. Tricked them? They were the ones who drove me out. Knowing a confrontation was inevitable, I headed to Ava and Rocky's place. Vivian was left with Ava's parents. They were clearly ready for a fight. Florence, who is this person? A lawyer. I had brought a lawyer in case anything happened. Ava and Rocky were clearly surprised. Having a lawyer meant they couldn't manipulate the situation as they might have wanted. Their dismay was evident. A lawyer? Why would you bring someone like that? Because you might make up some false accusations. It's better for both of us to have a third party present. Don't bring outsiders into this. If that's your attitude, then there's no point in talking. I'm leaving. As I was about to leave, Ava nudged Rocky. Reluctantly, Rocky stopped me, and the discussion began with the lawyer present. We didn't know there was still a loan to pay. You drove me out, and now you're saying you didn't know. Why are you laughing? Ava stood up angrily. Rocky stopped her and pointed to a voice recorder on the table. Ava sat down again but glared at me the entire time. It was clear from her expression that she was furious. The monthly payment for this house's mortgage is $1,800. Good luck paying it together. $1,800. Mom, how do you have so much money? After you two became adults, I started working more, cut down on living expenses, and began investing. I never wanted my sons to feel poor just because they had a single mother. So, I endured personal hardships to ensure they didn't feel deprived, allowing them to do what they wanted within our means, even if we couldn't afford luxuries. That's why I honestly didn't have much savings. Then, a coworker advised me on the importance of saving for the future. Luckily, I was only 43 when I sent my sons off to college. I could work a lot. So, I started a side job, worked double, and increased my income. Once I had saved a bit, I invested it. After 10 years, I had accumulated a significant amount. After my sons were independent, I decided to use the money I earned for myself and boldly took out a mortgage to buy a house, only to have it taken from me. Now that I've already transferred the ownership, you two will be responsible for the remaining mortgage payments. Since you took it upon yourselves to take over, it's your responsibility. That's not logical. Ava's face turned red with rage. Then, the lawyer explained that I had no obligation to pay, and that disposing of someone's property could be a crime. He also mentioned that if they insisted on making me pay for a mortgage I wasn't living under, they could face legal action for that too. Rocky and Ava, not well versed in the law, started to panic. Clearly, they didn't want to go to court. We understand. We'll figure out the mortgage on our own. Please don't sue us. Good, as long as you understand. Ava grimaced in frustration. By doing this, you're no longer a mother or anything to us. Don't ever show your face to us again. Rocky hurled those words at me in a rage. Since moving out, I hadn't seen much of my son anyway. After all the unpleasantness and being driven out, I had no feelings left for Rocky. Feeling relieved at the thought of not having to see their faces again, I said, I have no desire to see you again either, so this works out for me. Rocky looked surprised when I said that, probably thinking I would never abandon him. This wasn't supposed to happen. I heard Rocky's voice as I left through the front door. Months later, Ava called to apologize. Florence, I'm so sorry. Please come back. We can't possibly afford the payments. Even if you apologize, I'm not coming back. I've moved to a new house. Where is it? Can I come now? I couldn't help but laugh. What is this woman so desperate for? Ava, do you really think I'd tell you where I am? Please. We're going to be bankrupt at this rate. That's not my problem. Besides, Ava could just work. It's wrong to rely on someone else without working yourself. You could work. I have started working. But then Rocky got fired. What? Why? That surprised me. According to Ava, Rocky had been working late for overtime pay. One day, he stole money from a coworker's wallet while they were in the bathroom. Please don't report me to the police. Rocky had begged his coworker. Even though it was just $50, the coworker didn't file a police report, but did report it to their boss, resulting in Rocky's dismissal. Ava was furious that Rocky had jeopardized their future. What are you doing for just $50? Just work yourself. I am part-time. Get a full-time job. I have a child. Part-time work is more flexible. They apparently argue like this almost daily. With Rocky unemployed, the mortgage payments weren't waiting. I'm terrified of the payment due dates. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And you think it's okay to ask for help from someone you kicked out? You told me never to show my face again. So, I can't help you. That was just something Rocky said in the heat of the moment. Words said in haste can have irreversible consequences. Ava fell silent. She seemed to be crying. She sounded truly desperate. But I have no obligation to help. I can become a devil too. Sorry, but please don't contact me again. If you do, I'll block your number. I said that and unilaterally ended the call. It was right after that. As I was leaving the office for lunch with my colleagues, Ava, Rocky, and Vivian were standing there. My colleagues quickly noticed and showed their concern for me. Go ahead without me. I told my colleagues and approached the three of them. What do you want? I was surprised at how cold my own voice sounded. Then Rocky began to apologize deeply. Stop this, not here. I took the three of them to a nearby bench. I didn't want Vivian to see her father apologizing so deeply to her grandmother. I was wrong. Please, help us. One thing, didn't you say never to show up again? That was. Rocky's ears turned red, likely from the shame of his actions. And damaging his own pride. No need to apologize anymore. Just don't ever appear in front of me again. Am I not your son anymore? I don't consider you my son anymore. That's too harsh. Florence, that's really harsh. Do you have the right to judge me? Ava fell silent. After being ridiculed, treated as a nuisance, used, and driven out by my own son, I couldn't think of him as my son anymore. I realized they didn't understand how much they had hurt me. Explaining it to them would be pointless. They wouldn't recognize the abnormality of their actions. It's better to let them face the consequences of their actions. You're still Vivian's grandmother, right? I expected this kind of turn when they brought Vivian. Vivian is innocent. But if being involved meant being used like this, I decided to give up on Vivian. Using Vivian won't work. I won't extend my hand to you again, nor will I meet you. I plan to live in a different world now. But you said you wanted to see Vivian. Don't use Vivian. Solve your own problems. You brought this on yourselves. Are you okay being alone? That must have been Rocky's last attempt. But I'm not alone anymore. I noticed my colleagues had come back and were standing behind me. If I didn't have them, I couldn't have done anything about this situation. I'm not alone, so I'm strong. Let's stop this. Rocky. I'm embarrassed." Rocky hung his head weakly. Ava, pulling Vivian's hand, left Rocky behind and walked away. "Well, our lunch break is almost over, so we're going. Goodbye." Leaving Rocky behind, I left with my colleagues. Rocky seemed to stand there in a daze for a while, but was eventually escorted off the premises by security. Eventually, Rocky and Ava couldn't make the mortgage payments and fell behind. Ignoring the demand letters led to the financial institution demanding immediate full repayment. Panicked, Rocky and Ava consulted with the financial institution. The house was put up for auction. Due to its location, it didn't sell for the desired price. Maybe because I had customized it to my liking, which might have limited its appeal. Desperate to sell, Ava lowered the price on her own. It sold for about half of what it was purchased for. This left them with a substantial debt to pay off. "What have you done? You did this without consulting me. I thought it was better to sell it quickly. Why do you always act without thinking? This is why I can't stand people who haven't worked in society." "What? I'm taking care of the child. If you helped a bit, I could work too." Eventually, they were left with a large debt and no home. Their credit cards stopped working, and they couldn't get new ones. Unable to rent a house, they temporarily stayed with Ava's parents, who kicked them out because Ava didn't contribute to the household or work, using childcare as an excuse. Somehow, Ava's father managed to get them an old apartment, but a tough life awaited them. Ava's family refused to help any further. Ava's father even said not to come back until they had paid off their debts. Vivian ended up being taken care of at Ava's parents' house. I was worried about Vivian, so hearing that brought me relief. With Vivian gone and needing to work, Ava looked for jobs but couldn't find anything. So she ended up cleaning bathrooms at a shopping mall. There, she accidentally ran into a friend from her school days and was laughed at, leading to a humiliating experience. Ava came home crying, and Rocky's cold attitude only added to her stress. Rocky and Ava fought almost every day, often getting scolded by their neighbors because of the noise. Both of them actually wanted a divorce, but Rocky couldn't afford to lose his home, and Ava couldn't handle the debt repayment on her own. When they looked into divorce once, they found an article saying debts could be divided, which made them give up on the idea. Ava had no one to consult with, so she relied on internet articles. These messages were left on my mobile phone's voicemail. After they contacted me again, I decided to block their numbers. Rocky and Ava are still burdened with a huge debt, working every day for repayment. They must regret taking over my house, but it's too late for regrets now. As for me, after staying in a hotel for a few days, I received a call from Joseph out of the blue. He had moved and was calling to give me his new address. When I told him about what had happened for the first time, he was very upset that I hadn't consulted him and invited me to stay at his place. What surprised me was how spacious it was. I knew Joseph had started a business, but I wasn't aware of the details. The company had grown enough to afford a house without me realizing. Now, I'm enjoying my time living with Joseph. He's about to get married, so I'll have to move out. But he surprised me by gifting me a house next to his. He apologized for it being a small house. But I loved the design, it was exactly to my taste. I never knew you understood me so well. I was moved because I thought the reticent Joseph wasn't interested in me. A few days later, I met his fiancée, who was wonderful. She welcomed me living next door. They also welcomed me to live next door. Actually, it was her idea to build the house next to theirs. I'm looking forward to my new home and the new family next door. Even though I lost Rocky, experiencing Joseph's kindness has made me happy.
Risa, while you were away,
I moved my parents' stuff into our house. What? What do you mean by that? While I was on a trip, my husband Polly had moved his parents' moving boxes into our house without asking. And on top of that, I received unbelievable treatment from Polly. You should not come back anymore. Polly doesn't want me to come back home anymore. Even though this house is where our family has always lived, Polly wants to kick me out and live with his parents. However, I had anticipated being kicked out by Polly and easily retorted, "Okay, I'll move out on my own." I sought advice from my dad, Mike, and took a certain action. First, I sent an email to someone and made a plan. I returned to America with Mike. And then, I came back to our house. I started to execute the plan as intended. Polly, who had been naively thinking he could live with his parents, was surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Actually, the plan I had made with Mike was: my name is Risa. I am a 45-year-old dietitian working in a hospital. Originally, I was supposed to follow in Mike's footsteps, but inheriting my mom's love for cooking, I became a dietitian. However, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, Mike started working in France, so we sold the house I was born and raised in, and I started living alone in an apartment. Being plain-looking since childhood, I've always been inconspicuous wherever I go. Moreover, attending girls' schools from middle school to university, I had no encounters with men, and I had never had a boyfriend. However, I was fortunate to meet good people wherever I went, and after graduating from college, I got married. At that friend's wedding, I met my current husband, Polly, who was 3 years older than me and a friend of the groom. He seemed like the type who would be popular with the ladies. Luckily, or perhaps coincidentally, he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend was a nurse, and it seems they broke up due to misaligned schedules and night shifts. When I mentioned that I was a dietitian with early mornings and few holidays, he was very pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for the national exam for registered dietitians, so I was busy on weekends. Even so, he was kind enough to send me messages, saying, "I miss not being able to see you, but good luck with your studies." Feeling a sense of destiny with him, I thought I'd like to marry him if I passed. And on the day of the exam results, he invited me out to celebrate my passing that night. Congratulations on passing! This is how I feel, would you accept it? What he handed me was an engagement ring. He proposed to me right then and there. Overjoyed as if my passing was his own, I tearfully said yes right away. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought about living in an apartment, but with Mike's help, we bought our own home. I was looking forward to a happy life from now on, but after getting married, I started to feel a sense of discomfort around Polly. Thinking it was because I had no experience with men, I assumed it would be okay once I got used to it. However, one day, when Polly was looking at my pay stub, he made a comment that made me do a double take. "What's this?" I thought dietitians, being professionals, would earn more. I'm disappointed. What? Well, I just started working, and we're both working, so an income of around $200,000 should be fine, right? I retorted, feeling somewhat offended. It's not like I got married to be supported by my husband, but being told my salary was low didn't feel good. Yet, Polly went on to insult my earnings further. I've been totally deceived. If I knew the income was this low, I would have asked before getting married. A nurse would have earned more. Polly must have been talking about his ex-girlfriend. It's one thing to complain about my earnings, but comparing me to his ex-girlfriend is unforgivable. Indeed, nurses receive night shift allowances and holiday pay. In comparison, my salary is lower because I have fewer early mornings and holiday shifts. However, I have my own side of the story to tell. I happened to see Polly's pay stub the other day, and it turns out he earns even less than I do. Yet, I thought we wouldn't struggle with our combined incomes, so I didn't say anything. I tried to gently break it to Polly, not wanting to hurt his pride. Well, it seems like you have it tough too, so I guess you were hoping for a bit more from my salary. Sorry for not meeting your expectations. That's right. I work for a small company, and my salary is really low, so I wanted to marry a professional woman to achieve financial stability. I only meant to cheer him up with what I didn't even believe myself, but I never thought Polly would take it seriously. Before we got married, he was happy that my work hours were regular, but after we got married, he complained about my low income as if he had changed his stance. What kind of world does a man live in where he expects his wife's income to be higher than his? I was just dumbfounded by Polly's unreliable behavior. As soon as he knew about my income, Polly started looking down on me. Yet, he wouldn't hesitate to buy whatever he wanted without restraint. Even when I asked him to be a bit more frugal, he wouldn't listen at all. I've been spoiled by my parents since I was a kid, buying me whatever I wanted, so I can't change my attitude towards money that easily. I couldn't say anything back to such a spoiled statement from Polly. It's no excuse to say that he was spoiled by his parents when he was a child at his age. The following year after we got married, we were blessed with a boy. I hoped that becoming a parent would change Polly, but his habit of spending recklessly didn't improve, even during childcare. It was always the same with him spending his entire salary. If it wasn't enough, he'd sneak money from my wallet without me noticing. While I was struggling to manage work and budgeting while raising our son, Cedric, Polly hardly contributed to childcare. As time passed, struggling through these tough days, Cedric is now preparing for his college entrance exams this year. Thanks to my careful budgeting, it looks like we can afford to send him to college. Cedric, understanding our financial situation, has been studying hard to enter a national university. Yet, Polly came up with a ridiculous idea. Because I bought a new car last year, the loan repayments are tough. Plus, there's Cedric's exams, right? So, I've decided to sell my parents' house and have them move in with us. Wait, what are you saying? Suddenly living together like that, it's going to be a problem. Why? Risa, you get along with my parents, right? If we live together, we'll get their pension and become wealthier. Indeed, I don't hate the idea of living with my in-laws. It's just that I didn't like Polly's way of making decisions on his own. In terms of finances, we've been managing well so far, so there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't indulge in luxuries. Why do you always decide everything selfishly? Even the new car, you bought it without consulting me. That's my car, so I don't need to consult you every time. Seeing Polly's selfish behavior, this time, Cedric got furious. Dad, enough is enough. When I go to college, I might come home late from part-time jobs or clubs. If grandparents Arnold and Rothy are living with us, it's going to be awkward, right? Why don't you discuss these things properly with Mom? Cedric, coming out of his room all of a sudden and raising his voice, left Polly wide-eyed in surprise. But the next moment, Polly turned to me, lashing out as if he was taking it out on me. Cedric talking back to me, his dad, like that is because of your poor parenting. Reflect on it. Saying that, Polly locked himself in his room and didn't come out for a while. I was happy that Cedric stood up for me. However, I was worried that the current home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Cedric successfully passed his first-choice national university. But tired of living with Polly, Cedric decided to move out and start living on his own. He said he wants to try his best on his own without relying on his parents, even if it means working part-time. Even so, Polly continues to ignore both me and Cedric. Ever since it's been just Polly and me at home, we don't even talk though we're in the same house. It feels suffocating. During these days, feeling mentally drained, I called my dad Mike in France to seek advice. Mike, worried about me, suggested I come to France for a while. I thought I couldn't take a long break because of my job, but it seems my colleagues were worried about my pale complexion recently. After explaining the situation, I was allowed to take some time off. However, I wanted to keep my consultation with Mike a secret from Polly. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I was away for a while, Polly might cool down a bit. But heading to Mike's, an entirely unexpected situation unfolded. Starting with a call from Polly while I was in France. Risa, I've moved my parents' stuff into our house while you were away. What? What do you mean? What do you mean, what? I've been saying, haven't I? That I'd live with my parents. More than that, Dad and Mom are angry with you. They said a wife who spoils their son like you is the worst. No way. I couldn't believe what Polly was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the type to speak ill of me like that. So, I've decided we'll live with my parents and me from now on. If you were here, it'd inconvenience my parents. After all, you're the strict wife who makes their son speak ill of them. Polly must have badmouthed me to my in-laws. Maybe the part about them being angry with me was also a fabrication. Angry, I thought about shouting something back. But, to stay calm, I just said, "I'll call you back later," and hung up. Luckily, Mike was home, so I immediately shared the phone call's content with him. Mike, looking disgruntled, shook his head. Polly, really? Relying on his parents at his age. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand why I have to be the one kicked out. After a long discussion, Mike came up with a suggestion that excited me. I thought this would teach Polly a lesson. First, I contacted someone by email, then called Polly's mobile phone. Polly, talking over the phone won't cut it, so let's discuss this when I get back from my trip. I said this calmly, but Polly, with a laugh in his voice, replied, "You shouldn't come back." Just as Mike advised, Polly didn't want me to return home. Expecting this, I retorted easily, "Okay, got it. I'll just move out on my own." Huh? Polly sounded taken aback by my unexpected response. But thinking I was just bluffing, he laughed and replied, "Move out? Where to, when you have nowhere to go?" "Oh, to the place I'm currently at." "What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends." "Wait, you're not with a man, are you?" Now he seemed to misunderstand that I was with a lover, so I decided to reveal the truth. "Well, if it's a man, it's indeed a man. But, you know, it's Dad." Mike's place." Polly sounded relieved. But he'd be surprised by the next part of the conversation. "Dad's living in a mansion in France now, so I've decided to live here too. That's why we're going to sell the house we've been living in." "What? What do you mean?" "Well, you should know, right? That house is in Dad's name, built for us. If I'm not living there, it's to be sold." "What? But Dad and Mom are here right now. What are you going to do?" That's what I said. It's no use talking over the phone. Polly, finally grasping the situation, hung up without saying anything else. He can't possibly imagine the further tragedy waiting for him upon my return to America. A week later, I returned home with Mike, where Polly was living with my in-laws. At the entrance, my in-laws greeted us with smiles. "Mike, it's been a long time." "Yes, I can't often return to America due to work." Risa has always been under your care. While Mike and my father-in-law Arnold were exchanging greetings, Polly quietly emerged. It seemed he hadn't yet informed them about the house sale. Looking awkward, Polly just bowed his head. Polly, the movers are coming today to pick up the stuff. Have you prepared everything? All your stuff is already packed. Oh, it's not just my things that are being moved out. Huh? Do I have to move my things out today, too? Polly's surprised shout caught Arnold's attention. What's going on, Polly? Why are your things being moved out? Polly, looking guilty, hesitantly explained the situation. Arnold became furious and started yelling at Polly. You said this house was bought under your name with a loan so we could live together. Making your parents ashamed, unforgivable. Arnold's thunderous voice left Polly speechless. Then, the moving truck arrived. After my things were moved out, my mother-in-law Rothy came out to direct the movers. Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is prepared here, please take it. Rothy had neatly prepared all the household items, including Polly's. Seeing this, Polly was dumbfounded. Mom? What's happening? Why are you packing Dad's stuff too? Where are you planning to take it? Watching Polly panic and question Rothy, we all burst into laughter. You've been completely fooled. What? What's going on? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden? Indeed, this was all a plan to trick Polly, discussed in advance by everyone here. The first person I contacted by email from France was Rothy. Rothy had been worried about my tired appearance for some time. After repeatedly asking why, I ended up telling Rothy everything about Polly. Rothy was shocked, especially at the part where Polly blamed his extravagant habits on his parents spoiling him. Rothy tearfully apologized for her parenting in front of me, which made me feel guilty. But Polly's wasteful spending wasn't Rothy's fault. As I comforted Rothy, our bond deepened. For me, without a mom, Rothy became someone I could consult about anything. Mike was aware of my close relationship with Rothy. Thus, he suggested involving the in-laws in our plan. Rothy, without letting Polly know, had been looking for a new place for them to live with Arnold. Arnold's scolding of Polly was all an act. I nearly burst out laughing at their convincing performance. Rothy, thank you for arranging the movers for me as well. Now, I can move to the house Dad built in France. I'm sorry, Risa. My son has caused you so much trouble. Rothy, we agreed not to say that, didn't we? Rothy and I laughed together. Polly, unaware of how close I was with his parents, looked surprised. Mom, where are we moving to? We've already sold our family home. We've already arranged a new place for us. Polly seemed relieved at Rothy's words. But that relief would soon be short-lived. So, it was like that. I worried for nothing. Then I'll just go there too, right? What are you talking about? That's a senior living apartment for Arnold to live in with someone else. Polly, you're not a child anymore. Find your own place to live. As soon as Rothy said this, Polly's face turned pale. That's impossible. I don't even have the money for moving, let alone find a new place. Indeed, Polly had squandered his salary on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. No matter how he struggled now, it was his own responsibility. Desperate, Polly looked at me with pleading eyes. I could guess what he was about to say. By the way, Mike built quite a big house in France, right? I had no idea you were such a well-off lady. Listen, I'll do anything you say from now on, so could you take me with you to that house? Suddenly speaking in a sweet tone, he was indeed trying to rely on me. I had no intention of indulging such naive thoughts and firmly stated my position. I've been fooled by your kind words on occasion, but I can't forgive you anymore. You've barely contributed to our living expenses and have just been playing around. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I've already discussed this with Cedric on the phone yesterday, and we've decided to get a divorce. Cedric agrees it's for the best. I vented the feelings I had been holding back, feeling a sense of relief. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding deeply. What am I supposed to do now? Polly cried, tears in his eyes, but my decision was firm. I presented him with the divorce papers and demanded his signature. Yet, Polly stubbornly refused to sign. Seeing this, Arnold showed his anger again. Polly, enough is enough. After all the trouble you've caused Risa, now you're thinking of relying on her parents' home. I'm ashamed to call you my son. That's right. I admit, I've spoiled you too much. But Polly, you're an adult now. Stop being so selfish and start living on your own. Convinced by his parents' earnest persuasion, Polly shed tears. What? Even Dad and Mom? Do I have no allies here? Muttering so, Polly signed the divorce papers. He then arranged to store his belongings in a storage unit and left the house alone. Betrayed by the parents he thought were on his side, he was visibly shocked. However, the in-laws had decided to cut ties with Polly. Not just them. I also promised never to let Polly see Cedric again. This was a strong request from Cedric. He had always resented Polly for never acting like a father. With the divorce as an opportunity, Cedric wanted to sever ties with Polly. I thought it was for the best for Cedric. Rejected by his parents and disowned by his son, Polly must have lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Polly spent some time living in monthly rental hotels and internet cafes. But once he received his salary, he managed to move into an apartment where he could live alone. During the divorce, I gave Polly a small amount of money as part of our shared assets. It was practically nothing, but I wanted to avoid any future claims for money, given my financial situation. In essence, it was severance pay. However, once Polly had a bit of financial leeway, he started getting into partying. Why do I know this? Because Polly contacted me, saying, "I'll find a woman with a good income and make you regret leaving me." Initially, after becoming alone, Polly would contact me just to express his loneliness. But once he had money, his attitude became arrogant again. After some time, the communications from Polly suddenly stopped. I wondered if he had found a new girlfriend, but it turned out the situation was far more serious. According to the former in-laws, Polly had fallen for a nurse he met at a party. Despite not being reciprocated, Polly persistently pursued her. At worst, he even showed up at her apartment. As a result of his relentless stalking, he was reported and arrested in the act. The former in-laws, having intended to sever parental ties, were troubled by their son's scandal, feeling deeply sorry for them. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you try to distance yourself, you're still responsible when something happens. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Polly seemed unrepentant. During the interrogation, "It was true love," he kept insisting. This led to a judgment that he was not remorseful, and his release was delayed. Such a man is better off cooling his head in prison for a while. After all, a penniless man in his 50s chasing such ideals will only cause annoyance. Now, I live elegantly in a mansion in France with Mike. Still not accustomed to the environment and not fluent in French, I'm not working yet. However, I can't stay unemployed forever, so I'm attending French lessons. Once I'm proficient in the language, I plan to help out with Mike's company. As time passed, Cedric graduated from university. He then moved here to work at Mike's company. In fact, Mike had called him over with the intention of making Cedric his successor. It was lonely being apart from Cedric for 4 years, but now we can live together forever. This thought fills me with joy. Now that I've become quite fluent in French, I assist with Mike's company and work as a cooking class instructor locally. Though my marriage failed, my life in France is very fulfilling. Despite being in my mid-40s, this is an ideal environment to enjoy life. I've decided to forget my past self, who worried about being plain and unpopular, and live positively. After all, there's still so much more to come. Surely, Mom in heaven is watching over me.
Erin, you've really aged. Women over 40 are pretty much done for, aren't they?
I think so too. Compared to the moms of other kids in my class, she's the oldest, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I get it.
Mom doesn't need to come to school events anymore. It's better if only Dad comes.
I totally understand how you feel, Paul. To be honest, I regret marrying her.
Right.
Recently, my husband Joseph and our son Paul have been having these kinds of conversations right in front of me. I am Erin, 42 years old. I live with my husband, who's 5 years younger than me, and our 10-year-old son. Joseph works for a cosmetics company. Both my parents have passed away, but Joseph's are still alive. Joseph's brother and his family live with his parents. They have 5 kids, so his parents are too busy with their grandchildren to pay much attention to us. In a way, it's easier than them meddling too much, so I don't really mind. Joseph used to be very caring, kind when we got married, but now he treats me like I'm just middle-aged. Paul, growing up seeing this, has started to speak rudely to me, imitating Joseph. No matter how much I scold him, he doesn't listen because Joseph just laughs it off.
But Dad says it's good to be honest about everything.
It's not nice to say things that hurts others. Didn't your teacher scold you recently for that? Paul recently made a girl in his class cry by calling her ugly. I had just been contacted and scolded by his teacher about it. It happens too often. I blame his father, who never scolds him. They're truly like father, like son. But Paul is only 10. I worry about what he'll become in the future if he is like this now. Even as an adult, it hurts to hear such things. Being called old or ugly every day by the only 2 family members have really gets me down. I quit my job to get married and raise Paul. But once he started elementary school, I took a part-time job at a supermarket. Actually, that's where I met Joseph. We started talking after seeing each other there a few times, and that led to dating and then marriage. I used to be a full-time employee at the main branch of the supermarket, but now I work part-time at a branch within walking distance from our home. Lately, I've been working weekends too, and the manager is happy about it. Are you sure it's okay? What about your husband and son? It's a big help that you can work on weekends. Yes, my husband takes care of our son. Your husband sounds great. That's the usual response when I say that. Indeed, Joseph often takes Paul out on weekends. But it's more like they're treating me as a nuisance than looking after him. Erin doesn't need to come with us.
Yeah, it's more fun just with Dad.
It'd be embarrassing if people thought Erin was part of the family.
I don't want people to think my mom is someone as ugly as her.
That's what they say about me. So he's far from a good husband.
If you give me more allowance, I might go out with you,
Paul sometimes says. That must be Joseph's influence. I already give you a monthly allowance.
It's not nearly enough.
Telling him to spend it more wisely doesn't help. He almost always spends it all on the same day he gets it. It goes on snacks and games, just frivolous things. An ugly woman should stay home alone.
It's Mom's fault. She doesn't give me enough allowance.
Saying that, Joseph and Paul left again today. I've been working on weekends lately, but the manager told me to take a break and relax with my family for once, and I couldn't refuse bluntly. I felt too embarrassed to admit to him that I was being ostracized by Joseph and Paul. After finishing the cleaning and laundry, I let out a big sigh. Having nothing else to do, I thought about going shopping for the first time in a while. A little stroll outside would be a nice change of pace. I enjoyed some window shopping, but then realized I didn't particularly want anything. Before I knew it, I found myself in front of a restaurant we used to visit often when Paul was still in preschool. Back then, Paul didn't talk back like he does now, and Joseph was still kind. I almost teared up thinking about those times. No matter how fondly I recall the past, it won't change the present. I left the place with that thought. A bit further away, I heard a familiar voice and turned around. What? There were Joseph and Paul with an unfamiliar woman, looking like a happy family, entering the restaurant without noticing me. Who was that woman? Paul was smiling at her, a smile he had never shown me. Back home, the image of Paul's smile kept flashing in my mind. Their close behavior didn't seem like they had just met yesterday. Had Joseph and Paul been meeting that woman on their outings? Then the worst thought crossed my mind. Was she Joseph's? When Joseph and Paul returned home that night, they acted as usual. I guess meeting that woman had become routine for Paul, so I decided to ask Paul first, wanting to know what Joseph told him about her. Hey, Paul, I saw you with Dad and a woman I don't know yesterday. Who is she?
Ah, you saw? She's much prettier than Mom, right?
Dad's friend?
No, she's Dad's girlfriend.
What?
That's what Dad said. He told me to keep it a secret from you, Mom. But now that you've seen it, can't help it. If you were as pretty as her, I'd have gone out with you too.
I was speechless at Paul's words, smiling, and shocked that Joseph had brazenly introduced his affair to Paul. I couldn't pretend not to know anymore. That night, I confronted Joseph with what I saw and what Paul said, planning to discuss it away from Paul, but Joseph said there was no need to hide it since Paul knew everything already. So we talked in the living room. Paul sat on a kitchen chair, silently listening. I had no choice but to ask about the woman. Joseph admitted to the affair without hesitation. I was actually thinking of talking about it soon. What do you mean? Layla is crazy about me and desperately wants to marry me. To do that, I need to divorce you. Layla is 12 years younger than you, Aaron. She's 30 and beautiful. Anyone would say she's the better choice, right? But taking your child to meet your mistress? What are you thinking? I thought it'd be better for Paul to get used to his new mom. What? Hey, Paul, what do you want? To live with this woman? Or your new mom? Which one?
I obviously want to live with Dad and my new mom. The nuisance should just leave.
Paul! I felt like being hit in the head with a hammer. I never thought Paul would say such things to me. But this house was left to me by my father. I have no reason to leave. I was about to say that when Joseph spoke first. Paul, this house was built by Mom's dad. So if we divorce, we won't live here anymore.
Is that so?
But, Paul, do you want to live here? In this old-fashioned shack?
What will we do then?
We have the new Mom's house.
We can live in that beautiful apartment?
That's right. That will be better for Paul, wouldn't it?
Of course. So old Mom and the old house, we don't need them anymore.
You got it, Paul, just like my son. Joseph's mistress had apparently lost her parents too, but she owned a beauty salon with her inheritance and was quite well off. Joseph had become close to her after making a deal to supply his company's cosmetics to her salon, and he was planning to quit his job and become an executive at her salon after divorcing me and marrying her. I was astonished that things had progressed that far. If Paul prefers Joseph's mistress over me, there's nothing I can do. I agreed to the divorce, exhausted and without the will to hold back. Of course, I demanded alimony, but Joseph just laughed. If it can be settled with money, it's cheap. Layla will pay. This way, I can finally be free of you, Aaron. Paul laughed alongside Joseph. After I signed the divorce papers, Joseph and Paul left looking happy. Watching them go, I felt my heart growing colder. Had I become such a boring person that they could look down on me like this? I thought I had tried my best for Joseph and Paul. Feeling pathetic that this was the result, I decided to forget them. There was no point in staying down. It was foolish to waste any more of my life for them. I was glad I had a part-time job. Having a place to work felt incredibly reassuring. And 3 months after the divorce, I was offered a full-time position. I was so happy. Discarded like trash by Joseph and Paul, finding a place that recognized and needed me was a relief. I decided to work hard and live my life seriously. 5 years passed, and one day, my doorbell rang insistently. When I rushed to answer, 2 shabby men were standing there. At first, I thought they were beggars, but who would beg at someone's house these days? Then the younger man said, "Mom, I've missed you." "Who are you?" "It's me, Paul." "I've missed you too, Aaron." It was Joseph and Paul. They had become thin, haggard, and unkempt, completely different from 5 years ago. Paul, who was 10 then, was now 15, a 9th grader. Teenagers grow fast. I wouldn't have recognized him under normal circumstances, but why were they here now, looking like this? The house has really changed. It's so impressive now. Aaron, where did you hide all this money?
That's none of your business.
Hey, let's get back together.
What nonsense are you talking about?
Apparently, they had tried to rely on Joseph's family, but 5 grandchildren, the eldest in college, it was the most financially demanding time for them. They couldn't afford to help and didn't want to be burdened by Joseph and Paul, so they were turned away. Mom, help me.
What?
Who's your mom? Mom, don't you recognize me? It's Paul. Have you forgotten your own son?
Well, I don't know. As I said before, I don't have a son. Did you need something?
Aaron, are you still holding a grudge about what happened 5 years ago? It's all in the past, isn't it?
The past?
Deep down, you wanted us to come back, right? You've been waiting, haven't you? Hearing this, I realized that I had barely thought of them at all over these 5 years. They had already become strangers to me.
Aren't you happily remarried to that young, wealthy woman?
Can't you see how far we looked at? That's not the case. Even if he said that, it was none of my concern. I had no interest in their appearance or situation. Then, perhaps seeking sympathy, Joseph began to cry and talk. He explained how Lila's beauty salon had gone bankrupt in its 3rd year, how they were being sued because they've taken high payments for treatments in advance, and how there were unpaid wages and lawsuits from former employees. He kept talking, unasked. Layla was working nights, but blamed Joseph for not doing enough sales, forcing him to work part-time at a grocery store and as a day laborer at construction sites to pay off debts. Paul was burdened with all the household chores, allowed only 1 meal a day, and told to drop out and work.
So what?
How is any of that my concern?
Help us! Layla hasn't been home for a week. All my earnings go to debt payments, and without Layla's income, we have nothing to eat.
I don't care about your problems.
I always preferred you to her. Dad betrayed you, so it's understandable you're angry, but I'm your son. Aaron, are you betraying me? I was just a kid taken away by Dad. Please, Mom, let me stay here. I want to go to high school and I'll use my allowance wisely.
Allowance? To think they expected me to feed them, send Paul to school, and even give him an allowance? And not a single word of apology from either of them? Like father, like son.
I am your son, Mom. You can't abandon me. A mother can ignore her struggling son. Paul, you planning to come back here alone? Well, Dad's divorced from you, so he's a stranger now, but it's different for me. Do you even know the truth, Paul? The truth? Paul is just like me, a stranger to Aaron. Even if Paul wants to live comfortably here, I won't let him do that. What do you mean?
Paul's biological mother had passed away shortly after he was born. For a while, Joseph's parents took care of him, but they couldn't manage with their own young kids. Eventually, they gave up. That's when Joseph, with baby Paul, started coming to our supermarket. I felt sorry for him and ended up marrying him on Paul's first birthday. I thought of Paul as my own son and decided to raise him with care. Initially, Joseph was grateful and helped around the house, and I was glad to be married. But as Paul started elementary school, Joseph stopped helping and started saying, "You're cold to him because he's not your flesh and blood," whenever I scolded Paul for misbehavior. It became harder to scold Paul after hearing that so often, and so Paul became a child who spoke rudely and looked down on others. I tried my best to correct his behavior, but Joseph's tacit approval only made Paul more disrespectful. Moreover, after Paul chose Joseph's mistress over me as his mother, any maternal feelings I had for him had vanished. That's why I felt no sympathy for Paul now, pleading for help while arguing with Joseph. I realized I could never be his mother. Maybe we were never that close after all. Some families are close despite not being blood related, but I couldn't be that way. And I didn't want to become his mother again. That was my honest feeling, and there was nothing I could do about it. Can you two, who are unrelated to me, stop standing in front of my house in such a shabby state? It's a nuisance, so please leave. That's harsh. What if at that time? What? 5 years ago, if you had said you wanted to live with me, even without blood ties, I was ready to go through any hardship to raise you. Mom, you chose to leave me first, Paul, so I am no longer your mother. Don't come here again, and you too, Joseph. At my words, Paul and Joseph both slumped their shoulders. Then as I said those words, my husband Brian came home. What's wrong? Welcome home.
Aaron, you remarried?
Yes, 2 years ago.
Who are they?
Some people from the past, but they were just leaving. I had told Brian about my divorce and my son. He probably realized that these two were my former family. Without saying a word to them, Brian turned his gaze back to me.
I'm home. What's for dinner?
Your favorite meat and potatoes.
Looking forward to it. Let's go inside. You're done here, right?
Brian put his hand on my back and glared at them. They stood there stunned, but I entered the house with Brian, closing the door behind us. Later, Joseph's wife was arrested for fraud. Apparently, as their business struggled, they pretended to use high-quality cosmetics but actually diluted them with water or switched them to cheap drugstore products, selling them as their own luxury brand. An employee who did not receive his salary filed a complaint. Joseph, being in charge of oversight, couldn't escape liability for damages. Paul, though he graduated from middle school, didn't go to high school and was working part-time somewhere. Joseph came asking for money, but of course, I turned him down. Brian is a department head at the supermarket's headquarters. Brian, too, is remarried. His previous wife passed away from illness 3 years into their marriage. Over 20 years ago, they had no children. I think I wouldn't have remarried if Brian had children. It's not because I dislike parenting. I couldn't properly raise the only child I had. I didn't get to see him grow up. That's why I thought I couldn't be a mother again. Brian understands my feelings. When I said I wanted to live in the house left by my parents, he agreed and renovated it for us. He's always thoughtful and kind, and I want to stay by his side forever. One day at the airport, on my way back from work, I ran into an old classmate. It was a guy named Ethan who had persistently harassed me from 6th to 9th grade. Because of Ethan, I was driven to drop out of high school. Even as an adult, Ethan hadn't changed. Seeing me, he immediately demeaned me, calling me a dropout, a loser. For a moment, I almost lost my cool, but I managed to contain my anger and left the scene. Later, Ethan and I would cross paths again at the airport.
Hey, dropout! This is what a plane looks like.
Ethan sneered at me. When it became apparent that I was the pilot, Ethan's reaction was unexpected. My name is Oliver, 38 years old, single, and a pilot by profession. When I mention my career, it sounds like I've had an impressive history, but in reality, I once dropped out of high school. Between 6th and 9th grade, I suffered from persistent harassment. The root of my trouble started with a falling out with Ethan, my classmate. Ethan was extroverted, friendly, and well-liked by everyone. I, on the other hand, was serious and decent at studies, but not so good at socializing. That's why I was so relieved when Ethan approached me soon after I enrolled, worried whether I would make any friends. Our conversation started because we had both been in the same soccer club when we were in elementary school. Additionally, Ethan and I joined the soccer team together. We both joined the soccer team, but in our group, I was always the butt of the jokes. Ethan had a charm in turning even my inability to counter the teasing into a source of laughter, which was as cruel as it was captivating. Initially, I accepted my place in the group, even finding joy in making others laugh with my actions. But slowly, our relationship became twisted. The way we garnered laughs escalated gradually. At first, I dismissed it as part of friendship, but my ambiguous attitude towards these jokes was a mistake. The words gradually turned into blatant teasing and personal attacks. Sometimes Ethan would half-joking put me in a wrestling hold. Even when I laughed it off and told him to stop, no one intervened. Instead, they all laughed, watching Ethan and me. I'm not making them laugh. I'm being laughed at, I realized. Ethan was just enjoying humiliating me. That realization made staying in the group painful. The teasing that I once brushed off with a laugh became unbearable. One day, while walking down the hallway, I was slapped on the head with the usual, "Hey!" Normally, I would just laugh it off with a "What's up?" But that day, I firmly said, "Stop it!" Ethan, looking annoyed, retorted, "What's with you lately? You getting all moody? I'd let you in our group, so at least look like you're having fun." "Can't do that. It's not fun." "What? You always used to laugh. Besides, for someone named Oliver, you're getting too bold." Ethan said this with an intimidating voice, glaring at me. But I stood my ground, staring back at him. Ethan eventually left saying, "Fine then," and quickly joined the rest of his group. From the next day, my life became a living hell. At school,
Ethan and the others he'd influenced, even classmates not involved, started ignoring me. It would have been better if it had ended at that. But they soon began actively harassing me, with Ethan as the ringleader. At first, I tried to stay strong, showing up at school and extracurricular activities, but the pain soon became unbearable, and I started skipping both. Entering 8th grade with the added stress of adolescence, their behavior became even more intense. I missed nearly half of 8th grade, and naturally my grades and evaluations plummeted. I was once considered for a renowned private school in the state during 7th grade, but now I was barely managing to qualify for a lesser-known private school. Still, I tried to study, hoping to escape the situation by graduating middle school. However, things didn't go as planned, and to my dismay, I ended up in the same public school as Ethan. In middle school, I had some respite because Mr. Brown, my 7th grade English teacher, took an interest in my situation. He even reprimanded Ethan and his group. But high school was relentless. Helping to build new relationships in high school, I unfortunately found myself in the same class as Ethan.
Oh, it's Oliver!
Ethan declared as I entered the classroom, grabbing my collar and announcing in front of everyone.
Let's all tease this guy. He's always been the one to get picked on since middle school. He enjoys it, right?
Initially, my classmates were unsure, but once they decided I was an easy target, they became merciless. Unlike middle school, there were no teachers to protect me. Eventually, my spirit broke and I found myself unable to go to school. Failing to meet the credit requirements, I was held back a year, and that's when I dropped out of high school. The person who tried to save me was Mr. Brown, my middle school mentor. He was the only teacher who noticed my plight and reached out. Not only did he scold Ethan and his group, but in my final year, he provided his English prep room as a refuge from Ethan's torments. I would go to the English prep room after school every day to talk to Mr. Brown. During my struggling 8th grade, he even taught me one-on-one. Sadly, despite Mr. Brown's efforts, Ethan's behavior never changed. Still, I believe Mr. Brown did everything he could. He was my only ally and emotional support at school. Just having Mr. Brown around made it possible for me to attend school until graduation. I kept in touch with Mr. Brown through frequent letters even after graduation. But as the situation in high school remained unchanged and my spirit was broken, I lost the motivation to go to school and didn't feel like replying to Mr. Brown's letters, leaving them unanswered. One day, Mr. Brown came to my house to apologize in person.
I'm truly sorry I couldn't be more helpful back then,
he said with a pained expression. When he learned I couldn't attend high school anymore, he brought a pile of information on correspondence and night schools.
How about starting over in a new environment?
He suggested. It's no use, I replied. My self-esteem shattered from being constantly ridiculed by Ethan and his group. Mr. Brown encouraged me.
Oliver, you'll be fine. With a change of environment, you'll flourish.
Pushed by his enthusiasm, I started studying for my high school diploma through correspondence education. Originally, I didn't hate studying, and with the active support of my parents and Mr. Brown, I made significant progress, contrary to my past struggles. Frustrated by how I had broken under harassment, I immersed myself in studies, refusing to let those bullies ruin my life. During that time, my parents told me,
It's great that you're always working hard on your studies, but it's not good to focus too much on them.
To give me a break, they took me on a trip. That was when I flew on a plane for the first time. The first surprise was the plane's imposing presence before boarding. I remembered how I used to love looking at aircraft in vehicle encyclopedias as a child. Flying through the air, I was completely captivated by the world above. The gradually fading cityscape, the thrill of breaking through clouds, and the clear sky beyond. The beauty of the scenery through the plane's small window made me feel free from everything. It was so refreshing that it seemed to erase all the regrets and burdens of the past. I want to fly freely in the sky. I want to be a pilot. This vague thought solidified into a firm goal by the time I returned from the trip. It was the first time I had a dream, and I felt my heart leap for the first time in a long while. However, becoming a pilot is not an easy path. It would also be a burden on my parents. But I didn't want to give up on something again. While I was wrestling with these thoughts, Mr. Brown visited me again.
Look at you! Oliver, you seem much brighter.
He immediately noticed the change in me.
How's your studying going?
He asked. It's going really well lately, I replied. I've found a goal. Mr. Brown looked at me encouragingly. Would he laugh? Would he say it's impossible for me? For a moment, these thoughts crossed my mind, but I knew Mr. Brown wouldn't say such things. Gathering my courage, I said, I've been thinking, I want to become a pilot. Mr. Brown's eyes widened, and tears quickly filled them. Seeing his face break into a joyful smile, I almost cried too.
That's great! I'll support you. Finding a goal is great. Keep it up.
Mr. Brown said with a trembling voice, taking my hand. His words cemented my resolve. I then shared my aspiration to become a pilot with my parents. Mom seemed a bit worried, but Dad said,
That's great! You've seemed much more determined lately. So that's what it was all about. Dad will support you all the way.
Mom nodded in agreement, saying, Yes, that's right. I studied hard, passed the high school equivalency exam and the aviation school entrance exam. I worked diligently in my studies and training at the aviation school and eventually obtained my pilot's license. But I didn't stop there. Aiming to become an even better pilot, I won a scholarship for a master's program in Germany and studied advanced aviation technology there. My paper on the impact of lateral forces caused by aircraft tire damage received higher acclaim than I expected, paving the way for my doctoral studies. After earning my PhD, I finally felt a sense of achievement. I considered staying abroad for work, but with my parents waiting back home, I decided to return. Back home, I got a job as a pilot with an airline in New York. One day, while walking to the airport exit in my casual clothes, a man in dirty work clothes called out,
Oliver!
I recognized the face immediately and was momentarily speechless. It was Ethan, the same person who cruelly mistreated me from 6th to 9th grade.
What's up? Long time no see. Ended up a high school dropout? Loser, huh? Why are you even here? Well, I guess you're probably a janitor or something, right? Got anything to say? Dropout, Mr. Oliver.
I was traumatized, forgetting where I was, my mind going blank. Ethan's tone, attitude, and expression brought back memories of those hellish school days. Amused by my stunned state, Ethan boastfully mentioned that he now worked here as a mechanic. He obviously thought I was a janitor, his demeanor openly dismissive. It seemed like he had no remorse for almost breaking me as a person. You have no idea of the pain you caused me. I almost lost my composure, but managed to contain my anger at the last moment, saying only,
I see. Good luck.
Before quickly leaving. My heart was pounding long after Ethan was out of sight. Later, when the shock had somewhat subsided, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in a while. It was Mr. Brown. He had heard about my achievements and, inspired, decided to pursue his long-abandoned dream of graduate studies. He had finally been accepted to a prestigious university in the UK. As I joyfully congratulated Mr. Brown, he said,
I have a favor to ask. I want to fly to the UK on a plane piloted by Oliver. Of course, sir.
I responded eagerly. I then made arrangements to ensure that I would be the pilot on Mr. Brown's flight. And then, the day of Mr. Brown's departure arrived. It was a very cold day, and I, in my captain's uniform with a jacket over it, was walking around the aircraft for an external inspection. That's when I encountered Ethan again. Everyone was at their respective post, and there were no other people around Ethan and me. Ethan, seeing me, mockingly swung a tool as if to hit me and laughed.
Hey!
I flinched, and he said with the same childishness as before,
What? Got scared? It's just a joke. Hey, dropout! This is an airplane.
he said mockingly. Just then, a voice from behind me called out, Captain! It was Miss Anderson, a cabin attendant.
Captain?
A surprised Ethan was ignored as Miss Anderson looked straight at me. Captain, it's time for the flight. Please prepare.
What?
Understood. I'll be right there. Leaving a stunned Ethan behind, I quickly walked towards Miss Anderson. Ethan clicked his tongue behind me, but I felt a sense of satisfaction as if I had finally outdone him. Soon it was time to board, and passengers began entering the aircraft one after another. Spotting Mr. Brown among them, I couldn't help but smile. Once all the passengers were seated and the hatch was closed, I introduced myself as the captain and promised a safe journey to everyone on board. I knew Mr. Brown would hear my voice. As a captain, I felt even prouder to be in this position. Ethan in those times were long past. I can't forget the humiliation of those days, but I'm not the same person I was back then. Reminding myself of this, I prepared for takeoff and the plane safely lifted off. However, there was an unexpected event mid-flight. As the control tower reported a sudden change in weather, the aircraft was hit by a terrifying storm. The aircraft shook violently, an extraordinary turbulence. Panic ensued in the cabin, and amidst the chaotic reports in my headphones, I felt a moment of confusion. But my more than a decade of experience wasn't for show. Moreover, the situation was similar to what I had written about in my paper. Stay calm, it's okay, I can handle this, I reassured myself. Working together with the co-pilot and cabin attendants, we secured the safety of the aircraft and calmed the panic. Eventually, we managed to escape the critical situation, and the aircraft gradually stabilized. Seeing the airport and successfully landing felt like a huge relief, but my job wasn't over yet. As the captain, I apologized for the incident and wished success for all passengers and crew members, completing my duties. Of course, the image of a certain mentor was in my mind throughout. Some time later, the details of the malfunction that troubled the aircraft were revealed. A part in a specific area was found to be damaged. Despite thorough double checks, it was unclear why the maintenance had been inadequate. When the authorities analyzed the camera footage, it was discovered that the malfunction was due to Ethan's actions. It was a case of deliberate tampering. Initially, Ethan denied the accusations, but when he saw me, his face flushed. Observing his strange reaction, the others turned their attention to me. I briefly explained the background of my relationship with Ethan.
It's all in the past. Why are you still holding on to it? That's why you're foolish.
I blurted out unintentionally, and Ethan seemed to realize he had cornered himself. He tried to deny it in a panic, but it was too late. Everyone present cast condemning glances at him. I'm no longer the weak person I was back then. Looking Ethan in the eye, I said,
You're the one who's been holding on to the past. Your actions could have cost lives. Do you realize the magnitude of what you've done?
Following my words, others started to express their criticisms towards Ethan. Pale and shrinking, Ethan eventually broke down and apologized, but that didn't absolve him of his crimes. Having admitted his guilt, Ethan was disciplined and resigned, facing criminal charges. What Ethan did, both in the past and now, is inexcusable. However, I couldn't help but feel a certain pity for him, driven to such lengths by his obsession with pulling me down. A few days later, perhaps by some stroke of luck, I found myself dining with Miss Anderson. She had asked me, "Would you like to have dinner together on our next day off?" Miss Anderson, always a cool beauty as an excellent cabin attendant, looked even more stunning in her casual attire. I had secretly been attracted to her for a long time, but had almost given up, thinking she couldn't possibly be interested in me, being 8 years younger. However, our relationship rapidly grew closer after that incident. Is this the suspension bridge effect? No, maybe it's something different. While thinking this and eating, Miss Anderson said, "You were really impressive the other day, Mr. Oliver." I was at a loss for words, and she chuckled softly. "What do you mean?" "When there was trouble, you gave calm instructions. Thanks to you, I was able to stay composed and act. It was admirable." Her compliments made me blush. "But involving many people in my problem with Ethan, I feel..." "That modesty of yours is also admirable, you know." "Are you teasing me?" "Of course not." Miss Anderson smiled, holding her hand to her mouth, looking genuinely happy. Her surprising actions didn't end there. "I'm the type who actively shows interest when I like someone," she said. I was stunned, feeling my face turn red. After that, Miss Anderson and I started dating. Although we both often find ourselves in the sky or abroad due to our jobs, she was always eager to travel to foreign countries in our private time. Since I also love flying, traveling together became a very enjoyable experience. France, Sweden, Vietnam, Australia. Together, we created many memories in various places. Each journey seemed to heal the scars in my heart. Soon, I plan to propose to her. I intend to invite Mr. Brown to our wedding, believing it's a strange fate he has somehow connected for us. That's the feeling I have.
"I'm sorry for being insensitive the other day." That's what Eliza, who's usually sarcastic, said to me as she bowed her head. For all I know, maybe Eliza was genuinely apologizing this time, reflecting on her past behavior. I let my guard down because of her apology. Little did I know that a police-involved incident was about to unfold. My name is Lisa. I've been working as a daycare teacher, a dream job, since my childhood. My husband Jace and I have been married for 3 years now. As we are enjoying a lazy day off, a call came in from my mother-in-law, Eliza. "You should come visit us soon. You haven't been home for 6 months." Upon hearing Eliza's voice, Jace made a face of annoyance. Though my in-laws' house is just a 30-minute drive away, Jace never seems eager to visit Eliza. He's always been put off by his mother's excessive meddling and maintains some distance. Eliza has always thrown jabs at me, ever since we got married, as if blaming me for taking away her only son. Though I find Eliza difficult, I have no choice but to go when called. The last time she told us to visit and we didn't, she showed up at our house unannounced. To avoid that hassle, it's better to go see her before she takes matters into her own hands. Sure enough, upon visiting for the first time in 6 months, the sarcastic comments started flying. Every time I visit, I feel stressed, being pestered about not having children yet. "You can't have kids because you're busy working. A woman should stay home." My father-in-law, Derek, a retired middle school teacher, often had to work on weekends due to his hectic schedule. Housewife Eliza always boasted, "I raised Jace all by myself. We can't make ends meet on my salary alone." Jace immediately encountered Eliza's snide remark. I want to work because being a daycare teacher was my dream, especially this year as I'm in charge of the seniors. I want to see them through to graduation. I explained that we're not planning to have kids yet, but that just led to more insults. "I was against your marriage from the start. What good does a daycare teacher do for society? You're just playing with kids all day, aren't you?" I was angry at being accused of just playing, but I let it slide with a wry smile. I can't let every one of Eliza's words get to me. Once she started her insults, there was no stopping her. "These days, mothers are terrible for leaving their kids so young. I wonder if it's mostly single moms or poor families." Eliza let out an exaggerated sigh. I can handle her criticizing me for not having a job or kids, but I can't keep my emotions in check when it comes to her prejudices against parents. Look, parents are struggling every day to balance work and raising their kids. What you've done, spending so much time with your children, is commendable. But not every family can afford to have a stay-at-home parent. So stop making such comments. How dare you argue with me when you can't even have children? Eliza retorted. As Eliza and I glared at each other, Derek finally spoke up. Eliza, you're out of line. Watch your words. I was surprised that Derek came to my defense. He's a man of few words and usually stays quiet when we visit. Apparently, Eliza doesn't realize she's being offensive. What's wrong with speaking the truth? Children who are left in daycare probably won't turn out well, she continued. Ignoring Derek's warning, Eliza reiterated her prejudiced views. Angry at her comments, Jace started to hastily get ready to leave. Enough is enough. Lisa, let's go. Eliza wanted to stop her son, but Jace was already heading for the door without looking back. He's become so cold to me since he got married. Eliza became hysterical, perhaps because her son was being cold to her. She blames me, but Jace's cold behavior isn't new. Ever since he moved out, he began questioning Eliza's excessive interference. I was shocked to learn she'd go into his apartment with her own key and read all his mail. What are you standing there for? Go get Jace right now, she commanded. Jace, who had already left the house, was ordered to be called back. Feeling irritated, wondering why I had to be given orders in the first place. It's sad, isn't it? You were always around, yet you're disliked. You mistake it for love, but it's just excessive interference. Thank you for showing me how not to raise a child. I snapped. I knew we wouldn't see each other for a while, so I let it all out. I was also angry about her terrible comments about daycare parents. I felt a sense of relief getting that off my chest. Her face turned red with rage. You'll see. I'll kick a nasty woman like you out of my house. Eliza slammed the front door after kicking me out. I figured this means I won't be called or visited for a while. I told Jace, who was waiting for me outside the entrance, what had happened. Good on you for standing up to Mom. We'll have some peace for a while now. I felt reassured by Jace's words, but what Eliza said last still bothered me. If we don't hear from her, I guess we don't have to visit for Christmas. A few days after thinking this, Jace got a message from Eliza. She's asking if we'd like to come to a pizza party. She said she regrets what she said to Lisa and wants to apologize. Jace asked me what I thought, and I hesitated. Honestly, I can't imagine Eliza actually apologizing. The olives on the pizza are from a friend's farm. They're really fragrant and delicious. Let's just go, and if Mom starts her snide remarks again, we'll just take the pizza and leave. I couldn't help but laugh at Jace's suggestion. That's when I remembered Jace has a real love for pizza. All right, let's go. I'm curious to see if Eliza will actually apologize. So we decided to visit my in-laws' home again on our next day off. As soon as we arrived, Eliza immediately apologized. I'm sorry for my insensitive remarks the other day. Can you forgive me? Eliza's deep apology made her seem like a different person. After that, Eliza and I chatted and laughed. This might be a first since we got married. Liza, you sit here. If you want seconds, just let me know. Eliza had even portioned out several pieces of pizza for each of us. Apparently, she's a bit of a germaphobe, even when it comes to family. The fresh pizza emitted an appetizing aroma. I noticed Derek wasn't around as we sat down to eat. According to Eliza, he was working in the yard, and she said to eat without him. Guess we'll start then. Jace quickly grabbed a slice and took a big bite. The moment Jace picked up the pizza, I smelled its wonderful aroma. Eliza urged us to eat the hot pizza quickly, so I took a slice. The colorful veggies on top looked delicious. Eager to enjoy the acclaimed olives, I took a careful bite. But the moment I bit into it, something fell off. The bacon was juicy, and the abundant veggies were delicious. But the olives and asparagus don't have any fragrance, I muttered in a low voice. But I couldn't complain about food that was prepared for us. Jace, do you taste or smell the olives on your pizza? I quietly asked Jace, making sure Eliza couldn't hear. He nodded as if it were a given. I thought maybe my nose was stuffed because I was catching a cold, so I continued to eat. 20 minutes after we started eating, Derek comes back from the yard and takes his seat. I must have looked puzzled while examining the pizza toppings. He asked what was wrong. I looked at Derek and said, "I was just thinking. I don't smell any olives or asparagus." Then Eliza's voice comes from the kitchen. "It's on there. Trust me." The moment I hear Eliza's laughter, Derek slams my plate off the table.
"Spit it out. How much did you eat?"
The plate shatters loudly on the floor. Caught off guard by Derek's uncharacteristic yelling, I stammer, I ate a few slices." Jace asks what's going on, but Derek just keeps insisting that I spit it out. Eliza, on the other hand, doesn't come out of the kitchen even though Derek is shouting. Confused, I get up to head to the bathroom and feel incredibly dizzy. I rush to the toilet and throw up repeatedly. I start sweating profusely and collapse in the bathroom.
"Call an ambulance, now!"
I hear Derek instructing Jace, and it sounds like he's also yelling something at Eliza in the distance. Next thing I know, I'm lying in a hospital bed. Apparently, I fainted temporarily due to dehydration from vomiting so much.
"You're going to be fine. We got you treated right away,"
Jace says, looking almost in tears, as he explains what happened. Turns out, the pizza I ate contained red spider lily, a plant considered poisonous. While it's known for its beautiful flowers, the bulb resembles olives, and the stem looks like asparagus. To an untrained eye, it could easily be mistaken. Quick-thinking Derek had sent a portion of the pizza with Jace to be analyzed, revealing the presence of red spider lily. Is Jace okay? I was concerned as he had been eating silently.
"We had all the pizzas checked, but..."
Jace hesitates.
"The only pizza that had red spider lily was yours, Lisa."
Chills run down my spine at this revelation, meaning someone intentionally fed me the poisonous plant. And the only person who could have done that was Eliza, who made the pizza herself. The doctor at the hospital says they need to report the food poisoning incident to the health department and asks for details. After hearing the situation, the doctor clearly thinks Eliza's behavior is suspicious and suggests contacting the police. Jace agrees, but says he needs time to process everything.
"I can't think of her as my mother anymore. She's a criminal. What would have happened if Dad hadn't noticed?"
I recall seeing news about people dying from consuming red spider lily. The thought that I could have been one of them terrifies me. First, I want to talk to Derek. I'm too scared to speak with Eliza right now. When we leave the hospital, we call Derek. He had left multiple calls and messages. However, what's even more terrifying is that there had been no communication from Eliza.
"Are you okay?" "No matter how much I question Eliza, all she says is that she made a mistake, but I'm sure she did it on purpose."
Even the usually reserved Derek seemed agitated.
"I've been holding back, but I can't take it anymore. She really is something."
Upon hearing about Eliza's shocking past from Derek, both Jace and I were stunned. Eliza lured me in, claiming she wanted to apologize, but she intended to harm me all along. Anger surged within both Jace and me, so we decided to confront Eliza directly. When we arrived at the parents-in-law's house, Eliza was sitting there, looking exhausted. She must have been scolded by Derek. Yet she didn't apologize or show any sign of concern upon seeing me. "I never thought Derek would catch on. I was hoping to get rid of you, the audacious woman that you are." Jace snapped at Eliza's brazen attitude.
"You've got to be kidding! You criminal!"
Eliza seemed rattled being called a criminal by her own son. "What do you mean? I did this for Jace's sake. If he stays with you, he'll never see his children. I'll find him a better partner, so just leave." Eliza didn't seem to feel any remorse for putting poisonous red spider lily in my food. So you intentionally mixed red spider lily. You wanted me to lose my life? Was this premeditated? Yes, I did it on purpose. Red spider lily grows nearby. It's easy to get. It's a shame you didn't eat more. You would have done more than just throw up. Jace lunged at Eliza in rage. I stopped Jace and pulled out the voice recorder I had in my chest pocket. Eliza, you've confessed to intentionally harming me, and it's all on this recorder. I'll be filing a damage report with the police. Eliza paled at the mention of the police. What? You'd send a family member to prison? Yes, and both Derek and Jace have agreed. Besides, you've done the same to Derek in the past. I relayed what I'd heard from Derek. There had been a major fight over a trivial matter before. The day after the big fight, Derek noticed that dinner's pizza had no smell of olives. As a former middle school teacher, he was always cautious about food poisoning and knew what could be toxic. Instantly, he thought of red spider lily. Derek faked a stomachache and didn't touch the pizza. After Eliza went to bed, he checked the trash can and found remnants of red spider lily, which terrified him. Because of his past experiences, he was able to quickly tell me to spit it out.
I can tolerate it if it's just me, but I can't allow harm to come to someone important to my son. We're getting divorced now.
Derek had been able to focus on work because of Eliza's support. She had helped raise Jace, so he couldn't easily bring himself to say divorce. He knew red spider lily had been mixed into the pizza, but never blamed Eliza before. But now, he seemed resolved to give up on Eliza. Eliza, who never thought divorce was on the table, was stunned. How am I supposed to live now?
I'll give you this house. We have some savings. They'll be your retirement fund once we distribute the property.
Derek continued talking about divorce, like he'd been planning it all along. Eliza barely had a moment to interject. While they were discussing the divorce, we decided to leave the house. We'll go to the police station with Jace. Please cooperate once the investigation starts, I said, and headed straight to the police station. The damage report was accepted, so an investigation into Eliza would soon begin. After that, Eliza started calling us almost daily. Please, retract the damage report. Her voice was full of exhaustion. Derek divorced her soon after and moved out. Between the police coming and Jace leaving, nasty rumors about Eliza had started in the neighborhood. Though she begged for help, I had no sympathy. I can't deal with any more persistent phone calls. Even if I change my phone number, there's nothing stopping them from just showing up at my house. Fed up with even having to deal with this, I finally said, Fine, I'll retract the damage report. But never show your face to us again. Even when a grandchild is born, you won't meet them. If you approach us, I'll consult the police. This seemed to shock Eliza, who had been eagerly awaiting a grandchild. However, she must have thought that a criminal record would be more damaging. Eliza ended up paying me settlement money, so I withdrew the damage report. She probably used the money from a property division she got during her divorce from Derek, so her savings must have taken a big hit. I heard from Derek that Eliza couldn't take the neighborhood gossip anymore, and eventually sold her house to move to a cheaper rental in Philadelphia. Apparently, she's been calling Derek, wanting to get back together, but he made it clear that's not happening. From here on out, Eliza is likely facing a lonely life on her own. As for Derek, he moved close to our house. I've grown to love Derek, who I can really count on. I'm sure that even if we have grandchildren in the future, Derek will be there to protect them.
My name is Olivia. I'm 45 years old. I married Matthew, who's 2 years younger than me, 15 years ago. We met at a social gathering. A friend mentioned that I had recently bought a house. It must have caught Matthew's attention because he pursued me ardently despite me being older. Initially, I was skeptical, but his warm smile and kind, intelligent demeanor won me over
during our one-on-one date. I had never had a serious relationship before, and I quickly fell for him. To keep him interested, I tried my best to embody the ideal woman he was looking for. Fortunately, I never disliked housework. I was used to living alone, so playing the role of a homemaker wasn't too hard. A year into our relationship, he proposed and we got married. Upon his request, I switched from a full-time job to part-time. Little did I know that my efforts to captivate him would backfire in such a way. It all started one evening when I was late coming home from work. The weather turned bad suddenly, and I rushed home, regretting that I had left laundry out to dry. If this was the case, I shouldn't have hung the laundry outside to dry. I was relieved to find Matthew was already home, seemingly having gotten off work early. Apparently, it was unusually early today. It was good. Great. The rain just started. The laundry should be fine, I thought as I entered the house. I'm home. Welcome back. Wait, why does he sound so grumpy? I saw Matthew sitting on the sofa watching TV with a pile of crumpled laundry beside him. What's the deal with the laundry? Thanks for bringing it in. Don't hang laundry outside when the weather's like this. Aren't you ashamed to make your husband do chores? What? My gratitude vanished. My husband sighed loudly. Why do you think I wanted you to switch to part-time? So you can take care of the house. You're my wife. You should be doing that. What an outdated way of thinking. And it's pouring rain outside. But back then, I was head over heels for Matthew. Plus, I was the one who tried to play the role of the perfect homemaker. I swallowed my complaints and agreed. Confused, I looked at the lucky charm my friend gave me for moments like this. Slowly, my heart calmed down. Back then, that was enough for me not to resent Matthew. A year later, our adorable daughter Ava was born. Being close to my family was a godsend for support. Matthew adored Ava. But that was it. He never really helped much with housework or childcare. Yet, Ava was very attached to him because he spoiled her. Maybe being playful is enough? Fortunately, we could live off Matthew's salary. When Ava turned 3, I put her in daycare and started a part-time job. Then, I started using my own earnings to make my life a bit easier. Matthew never interfered with how I managed the house or raised our child. Whenever he complained about the house being messy or dinner being late, I reminded myself that he was just a big kid who happened to earn money to keep my sanity. Like that, we lived as a typical family of 3, more or less happily. Then, one Saturday, after Ava had gone to her extracurricular activities, Matthew's phone rang. From what I could hear, it seemed like it was his mother. He was scratching his head while listening intently. Once he hung up, I asked, "What happened?" "Well, can my mom and dad stay with us for a while?" "Sure." Matthew explained that his parents, Chloe and Brian, needed to move in temporarily because their apartment was being demolished. "They're getting old, and it's hard for them to find another place they feel safe in. Is that okay?" I get it. I really do. But having his parents live with us, although I felt uneasy, I agreed. What can you do? I could never say no in front of Matthew. A month later, Chloe and Brian arrived with a moving truck. They hauled in a ton of stuff and started exploring our house, eventually commenting. It's a bit cramped. That's because of all your stuff. I held back my thoughts and offered a polite smile. I opened the door that connects to the living room. This room, on the first floor is for you, Chloe and Brian. Please make yourself at home until you find a new place. It looks like it gets chilly in here. We have a heater, so feel free to use it. Chloe started unpacking her things, obviously dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Brian opened the fridge without asking. Hey, Brian!
What? We're gonna be living here, right? What's wrong with opening my own fridge?
Well, you're right, but you've barely been here before. A heads up would be nice.
I drink 3 beers a day. I'll let it slide this time, but keep it stocked from now on.
All right. I knew this would happen. In more polite terms, my in-laws have an old-fashioned way of thinking. The elderly deserve respect, and men are naturally more important than women. When Ava was born, their first words were,
"The next one should be a boy."
The tricky part is that they absolutely dote on their son Matthew, and Matthew, in turn, acts like a child around them. Fortunately, we live far from my in-laws, so until now, we've only had to endure them during summer vacations and Christmas. But it's getting harder to imagine this lasting much longer. I've tried to be optimistic, thinking it would only be a few months of hardship as we transition into a new living situation. However, that optimism was about to be shattered.
Olivia, I've been meaning to ask, is this all we're having for dinner?
Chloe said, wearing a displeased look on her face.
Is there a problem with that? Are you sure we're getting enough nutrients with so few dishes?
We might not have a very large variety, but I've loaded the soup with vegetable and there's also salad. It should be nutritionally balanced.
Grandma, Mom cooks dinner after coming home from work. I think this is enough.
To Ava's gentle interjection, Chloe responded curtly.
Children who know nothing shouldn't interrupt adult conversations.
I'm saying this for your benefit and Matthew's, okay?
Fair point. You do have weekends off, so you could at least prepare something in advance.
Matthew answered, and Chloe nodded in satisfaction. I'm so tired of running errands, like buying beer and adding more blankets because the room's cold. All because I have to cater to my in-laws' whims.
If you get it, then focus on your studies. Don't act all high and mighty until you get into college worth boasting about.
At Chloe's icy words, Ava hurriedly finishes her meal and quickly heads upstairs to her room. Seeing Ava's reaction, I can't help but sigh at Chloe, who's always complaining about bad manners. Does she really think someone can stay calm after being spoken to like that? Besides, there are people far worse than that.
Yeah, right there. Hit it! Hit it! Run!
Brian is munching on chicken and cheese, drinking beer, and loudly enjoying a baseball game in front of the TV. It's irritating to see Brian so excited, spitting while talking with one knee up on the couch. Ever since the in-laws came, Brian, being the eldest male, gets the most special treatment, followed by Matthew, Chloe, and then me, Ava. Sure, there's a time and place to respect the pecking order within a family, but what about Ava's feelings when her whole life gets upended because of the whims of live-in in-laws? These in-laws don't work, don't contribute to household expenses, and don't even look for a new place. When I asked them to contribute financially, they screamed at me hysterically.
We never asked our son for money. How dare you ask us for money?
It doesn't make any sense. They're still spending money at the spa and shopping without a second thought. Both Ava and I are nearing our limit. Over the weekend, I waited until the in-laws were asleep and snuck in a conversation with Matthew. Listen, ever since Brian and Chloe arrived, Ava's been locking herself in her room. Plus, we're spending more on groceries and utilities. This is our home. You should talk to Chloe and Brian about being more considerate.
Huh? Oh, they said they'll move out soon. Just bear with it for a little while.
Matthew responds absent-mindedly, eyes glued to his mobile phone. Lately, he's been addicted to mobile games. Whenever he's free, he's on his phone. He's been working late and even going to work on weekends. The other weekend, he suddenly had to go on a business trip and left in a hurry. Are you even listening?
I'm listening, I'm listening.
What could be so interesting? As I lean over to take a look, Matthew abruptly stands up, hiding the screen.
What are you doing? That's private.
Sure, mobile phones are private. But should he be so startled just because I might see his game? What are you hiding?
Nothing.
If it's nothing, then show me. I'm curious about what mobile game has you so hooked.
Well, it's just that,
Matthew fumbles with his phone behind his back. And just then, a message alert rings out from his usually quiet phone. It seems he had taken it off silent mode without realizing. It's Friday night, 11 p.m. Who messages someone at this hour? It's not like we're teenagers anymore. Something seemed off. You got a message. Want to check it? I smiled calmly. Matthew glanced at his phone screen and gave a fake smile.
It's a work thing. We should head to bed. I have to work tomorrow.
On his way to the bedroom, Matthew's phone slipped out of his hand. As he quickly picked it up and skimmed the screen, the message read, Megan, looking forward to tomorrow. Love you. Panicked, I snatched his phone and confronted him. What's this about having fun at work with another woman? Who's Megan? Love you? Have you been sending her the same thing? My gut feeling was right. Matthew looked around nervously before sitting down.
I'm sorry. It was just a harmless game.
To put it bluntly, Matthew was cheating. His excuse about being addicted to mobile games was a total lie. Turns out, the other woman was a junior colleague, and his excuses about weekend shifts and business trips were all lies too. The unexpected betrayal left me dizzy. Here I was, balancing work, house chores, and childcare, doing my best to support Matthew. Fed up with his dismissive attitude, something in me snapped. You think it's okay because you're not serious.
You're so annoying.
Just then, my in-laws woke up, rubbing their sleepy eyes.
What's going on?
Perfect timing. Let's share what their darling son has done. Brian, Chloe, you need to hear this. I explained everything I just found out to my in-laws. Matthew sat there, shrinking like a child who just got scolded. I didn't care if they thought it was childish to tattle to my in-laws. They all should feel a bit of shame. Matthew and his parents. I finished my rant and took a deep breath. That's when Brian mumbled, seemingly uninterested.
Is that all?
What?
You said it was a game, right? A fling or two is just men being men. If you're gonna be angry over that, you're going to have a hard time.
I can't take this anymore. That's right. Chloe would understand me, I thought. I looked away from ear-picking Brian to Chloe and was flabbergasted. Unbelievably, Chloe was rubbing Matthew's back and consoling him.
It's terrible that she snooped through your phone and yelled at you. She used to be such a domestic and adorable woman when she first came to greet us. Now look at her. Just an irritating wife. I'd understand if you wanted to have some fun. Mom, you get me? All I wanted was a little excitement.
Matthew lifts his face, nodding in agreement. Chloe, seemingly astounded, lets out a sigh.
Please don't throw a tantrum over this. If she's getting cheated on, it's because she lacks charm, you know.
I'm at a loss for words. I can't keep up with these people who, as if nothing happened, not only go on with life, but also defend their cheating son. I thought I could hold on at least until Ava becomes an adult, but I've reached my limit. Let's get a divorce. I pulled out the pre-filled divorce application that I got when I was younger. Matthew looked at his parents as if he were a helpless puppy. His parents snorted.
Matthew, we think it's fine to break up. You're talented and handsome. You'll have plenty of chances. Besides, the girl you're dating now is young, right? Expecting a son, perhaps? Women are just too chatty anyway.
Matthew, seeing how the situation unfolds, laughs as if he just realized something.
Exactly. She used to be so adorable, but now she treats me like I'm invisible. Starting a new family could be a way to reset things.
You've got to be kidding me. It was Matthew who first started neglecting Ava. Matthew started finding it tedious to engage with Ava as she matured and lost some of her cuteness. It's absurd to think a father who only engages whimsically would be liked. Whatever affection I had left for Matthew dissipates rapidly. So you admitted to cheating. For the divorce, expect not just property division, but also a minimum of a few $1,000s in compensation. The moment I say this, Matthew's hand stops writing. Chloe grabs his hand.
Why should our son pay that much when you're the cause of the affair? In our time, that wasn't a thing. If you have to pay that, don't agree to the divorce.
Even if it's a messed up logic, it's 3 against 1 from an outsider's perspective. Matthew snickers at his own situation.
That's right. If I don't sign here, we can't get divorced. If you want a divorce, you have to respect our opinions as well.
What is he saying? Is this some kind of threat? I can't do this anymore. Everything about these people is just too much. My anger is about to explode. Fine. Instead of property and compensation, I'll just take what I bought. You can record this as a promise. Matthew and his parents visibly relax. Before I change my mind, Chloe prompts us to open the voice memo apps on our phones. I record exactly what I just said, and Matthew quickly agrees.
Here's to new beginning.
Matthew eagerly starts filling out the divorce application. Late that night, after the 3 of them went to bed, I sent Ava a message about our future plans. I sighed with relief when Ava's okay came back. Don't have any regrets now. Be prepared. Then, I hurriedly looked for a new place to live. The divorce papers are already filed. Of course, I won full custody of Ava. Today's the day Ava and I leave this house for good. I was busy making preparations for the move. My in-laws and Matthew have become more arrogant than ever. Day drinking, as usual. We need to get out of here ASAP. Ava has long lost patience with my in-laws and has already packed her stuff. I didn't have much to pack either. It figures. I'd hardly done any shopping for myself since getting married. It was almost time for the movers to arrive.
It's good we don't have much stuff. Makes the move cheaper,
Chloe said, poking at our packed boxes. Ava and I exchanged glances and couldn't help but laugh. What are you talking about? We ordered the largest truck available. Huh? Ignoring the stunned Chloe, I walked over to the fridge and forcefully yanked out the plug.
Hey, what are you doing?
This is mine. I bought it. I began to unload the fridge, piling up all the food and beverages. Of course, the freezer wasn't an exception. The floor got a little wet, but I couldn't care less. Chloe grabbed my arm. I'm busy. I shrugged her off and went on to unplug all the appliances, carrying out whatever I could. Microwave, electric kettle, toaster, multi-cooker, washing machine, dishwasher, robot vacuum. I smiled at the shocked Matthew. Most of my paycheck went into these appliances to lighten your load around the house. Didn't you notice? That's right. Most of the appliances here I purchased. But not just that. Mom, I got it down! Ava came down holding a ceiling light. Thanks, please get the ones downstairs next. Ava grabbed a step stool and reached for the living room light. Matthew and Brian looked puzzled, probably because they'd been drinking. Oh well, let me explain. Also the air conditioners, lights, and large furniture around the house, I bought those, remember? Matthew seemed to snap back to reality.
Please stop. Just stop.
No way. I opened the closet, packed full of Chloe and Brian's clothes. I'm only taking what's mine. Without giving them a chance to respond, I grabbed their clothes and tossed them on the floor. High-end brands or not, I couldn't care less. I emptied the closet, bookshelf, and decorative shelf one by one. Oh right, my dresser. I pulled open the drawers to find makeup that probably belonged to Chloe. Such expensive stuff going to waste. I can't be bothered to take it out one by one. So be it. All right, here we go. Flipping over each drawer, just like that, they're empty. Phew, feels good. Chloe's face is pale as she scrambles to gather her makeup. Mom, the movers are here. Ava calls out to me loudly. Show them around. Tell them to start moving things. I hear Ava responding to the movers in an energetic voice. She's acting way more mature than the flustered adults in front of her. Sorry for the mess. Just go ahead and start moving stuff. The movers are clearly professionals. Our home empties at an incredible speed.
My.
What's left are a few pieces of furniture and a pile of abandoned food and entertainment items. Essentially, hardly anything essential to our daily life remains. Well then, see you later. After waving goodbye to the truck, Ava and I catch our breaths. I take an envelope from Ava and tell her to go to grandparents' house. Just then, a loud yell comes from behind. Startled, Ava shakes her shoulders. I urge her to go and then turn around. It's not just the alcohol. My in-laws and Matthew are red-faced and shaking with rage.
How could you do something so horrible?
I did exactly as I said I would. Now it's time for all of you to sort out your moving arrangements.
What?
All three shout in disbelief. Pathetic. Don't you remember? I own this property and this house. Matthew's face instantly turns pale.
You're not saying you sold this house too?
That's right. The house and land are already sold. Even though their fears were confirmed, far from celebrating, my in-laws looked defeated. Well, of course they do.
This can't be allowed.
Look, I bought this house. The loan payments? Also me. You had zero involvement. What makes you think you have any say in the sale? In fact, whether they lived with me or not, I had the authority to proceed with selling. I haven't violated any rules. Most of all, this house is practically vacant now. I doubt they could afford to restore the home to its original state, given their endless spending.
Don't worry. You have a lovely girlfriend, right? Why not go to live with her?
I can't help but laugh at Brian's desperate attempt. Feel free to try, but I wouldn't count on her.
What?
Shocked, eh? I wonder if that's what his expression means.
What do you mean?
After you left, I contacted Megan from your office. A horrible woman. Perfect for you. After I told her about your true nature and about Chloe and Brian, she said she never wants to see you again. At my words, the color drains from Matthew's face.
No way.
Matthew tries to make a call on his mobile phone, but the voice that comes through is mechanical, even though it's from the same woman. The number you have dialed is either out of service or switched off. Frustrated, Matthew and his parents don't know what to do next. I approach them and hand over an envelope I got from Ava. Here, this is from Ava.
What? You've got to be kidding.
Of course it's a letter from Ava. Her dad and grandparents are in a bind, aren't they? Matthew's face lights up instantly. Nobody mentioned the letter, but okay. They open the envelope and unfold the paper inside. The look on Matthew and his parents' face turns to shock.
What is this?
It's paperwork for child support. Drafted by a lawyer. It's a legally binding document.
You don't have to worry about splitting assets or paying alimony.
You get it now? I never made a decision about child support. Basically, it's the child's right to receive it. Matthew is speechless. You're Ava's dad. She said she's determined to go to a university she can brag about. You're paying for her tuition until she graduates. Matthew and his parents are utterly defeated. It's a little kindness I can offer. I put a pamphlet from a moving company in front of them and walk away. Fast forward a month. The money from the sale of the property was safely transferred to my bank account. I'm now living peacefully in my new place when messages begging for reconciliation start coming from Matthew. According to him, the affair got exposed at work because of the call I made. His mistress had to resign. Matthew was demoted and lost the reputation he had built up. Now he's living in a rundown company apartment in the middle of nowhere with his family. The home is full of discord, with Matthew and Brian who never lift a finger, and Chloe who always did as she pleased. Their place is filled with clutter and garbage, making living there nearly impossible. What goes around comes around, huh? I block him on all platforms, ensuring he can't reach me again. As for me, I'm back to full-time employment, and Ava is thriving. Our space is smaller but loaded with the latest appliances. With Ava's help, there's virtually no burden of housework. Ava is committed to both her studies and extracurricular activities. Even though I told her not to worry about what Chloe says, she insists on working hard for her future self. Matthew is seemingly living with his family. Maybe it's time for me to move back with my parents at the contract renewal. My parents adore Ava, their grandchild, and the feeling is mutual. Living together shouldn't be a problem. I also have the money from the settlement and property sale. Maybe I could renovate my parents' home to make it more comfortable for them and Ava. Opening my makeup drawer, I take out the new cosmetics Ava and I bought recently. I apply a calm-colored lipstick to my lips. Life lasts 100 years. My life is just starting. The me in the mirror looks happy. And yes, I'm going to keep being happy.